everybody. Happy Halloween. Welcome to the Beached Club. I'm Sherilyn Korber. I'm an indie author and the author of the paranormal thriller series Beached, which is set in the fictional upscale beach town of Bonfire Beach, South Carolina. You can purchase my books on Amazon, Apple Books, Barnes & Noble, Google Play, and Kobo. And if you're interested in having a personalized signed copy, you can order directly from me. Just reach out to me. I'm happy to do that for you. Because I write paranormal thrillers, how could I not do a Halloween video? The question has been, what kind of Halloween video? After kicking some ideas around, I ultimately decided to celebrate Halloween here at the Beached Club by sharing some ghost stories with you that are personal paranormal experiences of my own, or at least unexplained experiences. You can be the judge as to whether or not they're paranormal. My experiences started early in life. My childhood home, where I grew up and where my parents still live, was and still is haunted. Just about everyone in my family has had experiences there, and things occasionally still happen. Fortunately, none of us has ever felt threatened by anything that might be there. We've just all sort of coexisted all this time. We've never done an investigation there, and I've often thought that we should. Years ago, we did do some research on the history of the house and the history of the land, but that never turned up anything of note, so it's all still a mystery. Let me know what you think. When I was 6 years old, I received a dollhouse for Christmas. It was a kit that my parents had gotten to build this dollhouse, and my mother used fabric scraps left over from her sewing projects and glued them to the walls of each room as wallpaper, and they cut down carpet remnants from when they'd replaced carpeting in our house and put them in the dollhouse. So it was a kit, but it turned out to be a unique, personalized dollhouse, and I absolutely loved it. I spent all my time at home playing with it in my bedroom. Our TV was downstairs in our finished basement, what we called the rec room. And in the evenings, all of us, my parents, my brother, and me, would watch TV for an hour or so before my brother and I were sent to bed. But after I got my dollhouse, I chose instead to spend the time between dinner and bedtime alone upstairs in my room, playing with the dollhouse while they went downstairs to the rec room to watch TV. On one such night, I was alone in my room. I was the only one in the house who was upstairs. And my parents and my brother were downstairs watching TV in the rec room. I could hear the TV, kind of muffled. My bedroom door was open to the hallway. Down the hall was a set of steps that went upstairs to my parents' bedroom, and my doorway faced in that direction. At the base of those steps, across the hall, was our bathroom. From where I was situated, in front of my dollhouse, I could see the bottom part of the bedroom steps as well as the bathroom door. And while I was playing, I happened to look up, and I saw a strange man walk down the steps and go into the bathroom. I was terrified. Remember, I was only 6 years old, and I truly believed that someone was in our house. Why wouldn't I? It took me a minute to muster up the courage to step out into the hallway, and when I did, I bolted downstairs to the rec room, and I told my parents what I had seen, and they immediately came upstairs to check it out. No one was in the bathroom, nor was anyone else anywhere in the house on any floor at any point. My dad told me that I imagined it, that I'd been playing so much with my dollhouse and using my imagination that it essentially went into overdrive. And if nothing else had happened after that, I might have continued to believe him. The next incident that involved me directly came about 20 years later. In that time, I'd grown up. I graduated from high school and then from college, and I'd moved back home. I had a teaching degree, and I lived with my parents while I was working a full-time job that allowed me to take substitute teaching jobs at a moment's notice, so I could build my resume and ultimately land a full-time teaching position. Because I had been out of the house more or less for years, my brother and I had swapped bedrooms after I went away to college, since mine was bigger and I wasn't there often enough to warrant keeping it. So now I was in the bedroom at the opposite end of the hallway, closest to the bathroom and the steps leading up to my parents' bedroom. By that time, I had a dog named Molly. Molly was about a year old, and she slept with me every night, snuggled into bed right up against me. And one morning, I woke up around dawn to find her standing at the edge of the bed, staring at my bedroom door, which was closed. Her fur was up on the back of her neck, from the back of her neck clear down her spine, and she was growling. And there was no one there. There wasn't a sound to be heard. Everyone else in the house was still asleep. I sat up, and before I could move another inch, even to swing my feet around to get out of bed, Molly body slammed me back down, licked my face like, sorry, it's not you, and positioned herself on the edge of the mattress between me and the door. And this went on for a good 5 minutes. She began walking slowly back to the foot of the bed, then moving back up towards me where she'd give me kisses, then walked slowly back down to the foot of the bed. Her fur never went down. She never stopped growling. It looked, for all the world, like she was keeping herself between me and someone or something. She was guarding me. It was very, very clear. She was protecting me from something that she could see, but I couldn't. And I never did see or hear or feel or smell anything. And after a while, she settled down next to me and stopped growling, but her head stayed up and she remained on alert. She was still staring at the door when I finally fell back to sleep. She never went on guard like that again, but not long after that incident, one evening she was sound asleep on the floor when she suddenly sat up and then she scrambled to her feet and she began playing. She was staring at the ceiling and she kind of jumped back and forth like someone was holding something and teasing her with it, getting her to leap up and try to take it. I looked close to see if there was a bug of some sort flying around. There wasn't. And her movements were controlled and calculated. You could see that she was focused on something, and she was having the time of her life. When we all talked about it later, we came to the conclusion that this was not the same thing or the same person that had been in my room before that she clearly hadn't liked and thought was a threat. This one played with her, and she had a blast. She thought it was great, which meant that we had at least two different human spirits in the house. And I say human because to this day, there is also a dog. My mom sees it. It's a white dog. And for I don't know how many years now, she has talked about seeing this dog, even now. It could possibly be this dog that Molly was all up in arms about. Maybe she was being territorial of me. I don't know. But we had also adopted one of Molly's litter mates, who we named Maggie. And both Molly and Maggie would, together, watch something or someone move across the room, especially the living room. Maggie would often follow something and wind up going into the fireplace, not one that we ever used, so she wasn't in danger. The two of them regularly showed signs of seeing people or other dogs that the rest of us couldn't, and it has been said that animals are more psychic than people. Having witnessed Molly and Maggie separately and together, I believe that they were. I don't remember exactly when this next incident occurred. The best I can say is that it was while I was still living at home in that bedroom where Molly had guarded me and abandoned me to play with an invisible friend. I was cleaning my room, dusting my dresser, and I knocked my jewelry box off the dresser onto the floor. All of my jewelry went everywhere, all over the carpet. I picked everything up, I put it back in the jewelry box, put the jewelry box back on the dresser, vacuumed the carpet in front of the dresser, was in and out of the dresser and the closet next to it for the rest of the day and that evening right up until I went to bed. There was nothing on the floor in front of that dresser. There was no way there could have been. I would have seen it, I would have stepped on it. But when I woke up the next morning, one of my favorite pins, which was a large pin of a carousel with the horses and the pointed roof, that pin was positioned on the floor in front of the dresser where I couldn't possibly miss it, both because it was such a big pin and because I would have had to step on it to get to either the dresser or the closet. I couldn't remember if I had picked it up the day before when I was picking everything else up, so I can't tell you if it had been taken from my jewelry box and put there, but I tend to believe that wasn't the case. I believe that someone or something had either taken it and returned it, or maybe it had gone underneath the dresser and I hadn't seen it, and someone was making sure I didn't lose it and placing it where I could find it. I don't know. By this point, all of us talked very casually and nonchalantly about the ghost. Enough things were happening that none of us questioned it, but up till now, no one had actually seen anything except my mother seeing the white dog. At the time, I didn't give any thought to the man that I had seen in the upstairs hallway when I was 6. It wasn't until much later that I put two and two together, and I wondered if he wasn't the one Molly was protecting me from. The foot of the steps and the bathroom were literally right outside my new bedroom door, but like I said, aside from the dog, no one saw or heard anything or anyone. Then in the middle of the night, one night, I was woken up by a loud sound. You know the sound that a soda bottle makes when you kind of push the sides in and they pop back out? That's what it reminded me of. And I lay there in bed listening, and I didn't hear anything else for a few seconds. And then down the hall, my brother's bedroom door flew open, and I heard him run down the hall and up the steps to my parents' bedroom, where he woke them up and said, "I think the ghost was just in my room." As he told it, he opened his eyes, and he saw a woman standing in the middle of the room with her back to him. She had long, dark hair, and my hair back then was long and dark, which was its natural color when I was younger and I hadn't started going gray yet and needed to cover it with a blonde. He initially thought it was me, and he wondered why I was there in the middle of the night. And then she turned and she looked at him over her shoulder, and he saw very clearly that it was not me. And then, as he put it, she took 2 steps towards his closet, but she never made it there. She disappeared as he watched. Since then, I've done a lot of reading and studying about ghosts and spirits and the other side, and I learned that when a spirit crosses the boundary between the other side and this one, the energy that it takes to do so makes a very loud sound, just like the sound that I heard that night, right before my brother came flying out of his room saying the ghost had been there. I believe that that is exactly what happened. That is what I heard. It would be easy enough to believe that all of my experiences were simply based on my environment and whatever was in our house, but the truth is that I have seen 2 other ghosts in my life outside of the house. I could go on for quite a while about other things that have happened that don't involve physically witnessing ghosts or their effects on others, but for the purposes of Halloween, we'll stick just to ghostly encounters and just talk about ghosts. So after working in the public school system for a few years, I went into the field of higher education. And I got my start by working as a residence hall director at a small private college hours away from my hometown. Part of my job responsibilities entailed being on duty a certain number of nights, which meant that I was a first responder to campus emergencies as well as non-emergency needs. And I also had to do rounds of all the residence halls to make sure the students were all okay, nothing was going on that shouldn't have been. I would start my rounds early in the evening when the campus was still pretty lively, and I would make my last round well after midnight where things were pretty quiet and no one was around. One night, it was about 2 a.m., so everyone was either asleep or otherwise in their rooms. I went through building after building. I didn't see anybody. It was absolutely silent. No music, no TVs, no one talking, not a peep anywhere. I was walking through the second floor of one of the residence halls, and I passed by a custodial closet where the cleaning crew had their big sink, and they kept their mops and their floor buffers and whatnot. The door was open, which wasn't necessarily unusual. It didn't lock, and the students would use the sink for whatever reason. But there was a young man standing in the closet, facing out, staring straight ahead, not moving, not making a sound. In that moment, it didn't quite register. I figured he was hiding from someone to play some sort of prank, and I didn't want to give his position away and ruin it, so I just sort of smiled at him as I walked past. But he didn't acknowledge me. His head didn't move to follow me. His eyes didn't move to make contact with mine. He just stood and stared straight ahead like he was a statue. And it was after I had passed him that it hit me, and I stopped, and I immediately turned right around to walk back to the closet. The door was still open, but he was gone. I was only 6 or 7 feet past the door. He could not have gone anywhere without me seeing him or at least hearing him. And besides, there was nowhere for him to go that quickly. The nearest room was much farther away than he could have gotten to in just a few seconds. So was the stairwell, and all the room doors were closed. I don't know who he was or who he had been. I don't know why he showed up in a custodian's closet of all places, but I know I saw him. I know I definitely saw him. My last ghostly encounter took place about, I want to say, maybe 5 years after that one. I had left that college to go into undergraduate admissions at a big university in another city. And after a couple of years in their admissions office, I moved into academic advising, also at that university. I was in a different building across campus, and I had my own office in what I always called a pod of 6 offices, all built around a center area with a front desk right inside the pod door to greet anyone coming in. The front desk was right outside my office door. It was only about 3 feet away at the most. One afternoon, the pod was quiet. I got up from my desk to take something out to the front desk for our administrative assistant to follow up on, and then I turned and went back into my office. And standing next to my desk was a woman. She was older, but not elderly. She was dressed entirely in white, a white skirt, a fancy white blouse, white stockings and shoes, even a white pillbox hat with a veil that came down over her eyes. She was wearing glasses. I stopped and I stared at her, and she stared at me, and then right before my eyes, she vanished. I don't know that I ever told any of my colleagues about that. I definitely know I didn't tell any of them then, if I ever did. I never saw her again. I never saw anyone or anything else, either in my office or elsewhere on campus, in all the years I was there. I wish I knew who she was. Of all the people I have seen or I have sensed, including the ones in my childhood home, the woman in white is the one I am most curious about. Why was she dressed the way she was? What was she doing in my office dressed that way? I don't know. To this day, I still wonder about her. Those are a few of my real life ghost stories on this Halloween. Now I would love to hear yours. Post in the comments down below and tell me some of the experiences that you have had, and tell me what your thoughts are on the experiences that I have shared with you. What do you think some of these things were? I know there are plenty of people who don't believe or who aren't fully convinced. That's okay. I know what I've seen. I know what I've experienced. I know what I have learned over the years, and I believe. So that's okay. Happy Halloween, everyone. Don't scare yourself too much tonight, and don't eat too much candy. I'll see you again soon.